My lazy team lead dumped his work on me and bragged. That's what underlings are for. When I refused, he sent a nasty email to our director claiming I was uncooperative. I waited until the next staff meeting, pulled out the email thread, and read it aloud. His face went white as the director turned to him and said, "Care to explain?" I never imagined I'd be the kind of person to seek revenge. But sometimes, when you're pushed to your limits, you find yourself doing things you'd never expect. I work at a mid-sized tech company in Austin, Texas. For the past 5 years, I've dedicated myself to my role, consistently delivering quality work and fostering a collaborative environment. Our team was cohesive, each member contributing their fair share, until Mark was promoted to team lead. Mark was in his late 30s, always impeccably dressed, with a charismatic smile that could charm anyone. At first glance, he seemed like the ideal leader. However, it didn't take long to notice his tendency to delegate tasks excessively. While delegation is a natural part of leadership, Mark took it to an extreme, often offloading his core responsibilities onto others. Initially, I believed he was testing our capabilities or perhaps overwhelmed with the new role. Wanting to be a supportive team member, I accepted the additional tasks he assigned. But as weeks turned into months, a clear pattern emerged. Mark would assign me complex projects under the guise of team collaboration, only to take extended lunches or engage in lengthy personal calls during work hours. One particularly hectic week, Mark approached my desk with a thick folder in hand. "Hey, I need you to handle this project," he said, placing the folder on my desk without making eye contact. I glanced at the contents, and recognized it as a high-priority assignment that fell squarely within his job description. "Mark, isn't this your project?" I inquired, trying to keep my tone neutral. He smirked, finally looking up from his phone. "That's what underlings are for," he replied before walking away. I felt a surge of frustration. It was one thing to assist occasionally, but being treated like a personal assistant was demeaning. I decided it was time to set boundaries. "Mark, I have my own workload to manage. I can't take this on," I informed him firmly. His eyes narrowed, and without another word, he turned and left. The next morning, I opened my inbox to find an email from Mark addressed to our director, Sarah. The subject line read, "Concerns about team collaboration." In the email, Mark expressed his disappointment in my uncooperative attitude, and claimed I was hindering team progress. He had CC'd me, making sure I saw the accusations. I was taken aback. Not only was this a blatant misrepresentation, but it also threatened my professional reputation. I considered responding immediately but realized that a knee-jerk reaction might escalate the situation. Instead, I decided to gather evidence. Over the next few days, I documented instances where Mark had delegated his responsibilities to me and other team members. I collected emails, messages, and project files that highlighted the disproportionate distribution of work. I also spoke discreetly with colleagues, confirming that they had similar experiences. Our weekly staff meeting arrived. As we settled into the conference room, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. When Sarah opened the floor for updates, I raised my hand. "Sarah, if I may, I'd like to address a concern regarding team dynamics and workload distribution," I began. She nodded, signaling for me to continue. I stood up, took a deep breath, and projected an email thread onto the conference room screen. It was the very email Mark had sent, along with my collected evidence. "Recently, concerns were raised about my collaboration within the team. I'd like to provide some context," I said, walking the team through the documented instances. The room was silent. I could see Mark shifting uncomfortably in his seat, his face turning a shade paler. After I concluded, Sarah turned to Mark, her expression unreadable. "Mark, do you have anything to add?" He stumbled over his words, attempting to justify his actions, but the evidence was irrefutable. After the meeting, Sarah approached me privately. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention. We'll be addressing this matter promptly," she assured me. A week later, Mark was demoted, and shortly after, he left the company. Standing up to Mark was daunting, but it reinforced the importance of setting boundaries and holding others accountable. Sometimes, shining a light on the truth is the most powerful action one can take. At first, things felt calmer after Mark left. The team seemed relieved, and Sarah even called a special meeting to thank everyone for sticking together during the transition. She made it sound smooth and professional. But anyone paying attention knew there was tension in the air, like everyone was waiting for the next problem to hit. And it did. 2 weeks after Mark's departure, we got word that the company had hired a new team lead. His name was Ryan. Young guy, maybe early 30s, used to work at a startup in San Diego. During his first team meeting, he walked in wearing designer sneakers, talking fast, and smiling like we were all best friends already. I wanted to give him a chance. We all did. But it didn't take long to notice something was off. Ryan didn't ask questions about our workflow or try to understand how we'd been handling projects. Instead, he started changing everything: tools we used, deadlines, communication channels. It was like he didn't trust anything that came before him. Then one day, I was called into Sarah's office again. She looked concerned. Ryan says you've been resistant to the new workflow changes, she said carefully. I blinked. Resistant? I've been doing exactly what he asked. She nodded slowly but didn't look convinced. Just try to keep things smooth. He's still adjusting. I walked out of her office with a pit in my stomach. This felt way too familiar. The next few days, things escalated. Ryan started copying me on emails where he hinted I wasn't pulling my weight. I noticed he was always buddying up to Sarah in the break room, laughing a little too loudly, like he was trying to win her over. One afternoon, he called an impromptu performance sync with just me. No calendar invite, no warning. I walked into the conference room and sat down. Ryan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Look, I know you're probably still feeling the effects of the whole Mark situation, he said, leaning back in his chair. But I really need team players right now. I am a team player, I said, keeping my voice level. I've been here 5 years. I've led projects before. I've trained half the team. He gave a slow nod, tapping his fingers on the table. That's great. But loyalty isn't enough. I need people who are adaptable. I stared at him. Are you saying I'm not? I'm saying, he said, standing up, that I'm keeping an eye on things. That was it. I left that room more angry than I'd ever been, even more than when Mark pulled his stunt. I knew what was happening. Ryan was trying to make a name for himself by clearing out anyone who didn't worship him from day one. And I was apparently his first target. But I wasn't going down quietly. I started documenting everything. Every task I completed, every project I helped on, every time Ryan contradicted his own instructions. I saved emails. I screenshotted Slack messages. I wrote it all down in a timeline. Then, the twist. A coworker, Julia, pulled me aside in the break room. You should know something, she whispered. Ryan's been telling Sarah that you were close with Mark. That you defended him during the investigation. He's spinning the story to make it look like you're covering for toxic behavior. I was speechless. Not only was that a flat-out lie, but it also meant Ryan had been digging through past HR reports or twisting things that were said in confidence. He was playing dirty. Dirtier than Mark ever did. But I wasn't afraid of him. Not anymore. And I had a plan. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay awake, going over everything in my head. The projects, the emails, the meeting with Ryan, and especially what Julia had told me. He wasn't just pushing me out, he was trying to rewrite the past, turning my stand against Mark into something shady. The next morning, I came in early. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but I knew I needed to be ahead of whatever Ryan was planning. Then another twist hit. When I opened my laptop, I saw an internal meeting invite from HR. No subject. Just 15-minute check-in. And only one other name on it, Sarah. My stomach dropped. I walked into the HR office at 10 sharp. Sarah was already there with a forced smile. Across the table was Natalie from HR, polite but unreadable. Just a quick chat, Natalie said. We've received some concerns about communication breakdowns between you and the new team lead. Sarah didn't say a word. I felt the heat rise in my neck. Let me guess, Ryan said I'm insubordinate now? Natalie looked uncomfortable. We just want to make sure there's alignment. So I asked, can I see the formal complaint? Or at least who made it? Of course, they couldn't tell me. Confidential, they said. I didn't lose my temper. I just looked Sarah in the eye and said, are we doing this again? Didn't we learn anything from Mark? That must have hit a nerve. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. I walked out of the meeting and went straight back to my desk. I wasn't fired. Not yet. But they were starting to build a case. I made a decision right then. If Ryan wanted to play corporate politics, fine. But he'd forgotten I'd survived Mark. I knew the system now. I knew how people covered their tracks. I also knew the one thing that could tear it all down, documentation. So I started compiling. But this time, I didn't just gather emails and messages. I reached out to people who'd worked with Ryan before. Through LinkedIn, I found 2 ex-colleagues from his San Diego job. I messaged them politely, just asking if they had ever had management issues with him. One responded. Her name was Valerie. She said, Ryan? That guy? He threw me under the bus to save his own skin and got away with it. He always goes after the most experienced person first, makes it look like they're a threat to innovation. She even offered to write a statement if needed. She still had some of their email threads. That was it, I had a pattern. But here's where things got even messier. A few days later, I caught wind of something that really set everything in motion. We had a new intern, Daniel, fresh out of UT Austin. Smart kid eager to learn. I noticed he looked uneasy around Ryan, always avoiding him in meetings. One afternoon, I asked him casually if everything was okay. He hesitated. Then said, "Ryan asked me to go through shared drives and flag anything that looks non-compliant, especially files under your name." I froze. "Did he say why?" Daniel shrugged. "Said it was an audit thing." "Nope. That wasn't an audit. That was a setup." Now it wasn't just my reputation, my job was on the line. So I kicked my plan into high gear. I gathered all documentation into a secure, private cloud folder, organized by dates and topics. I wrote a clear timeline of everything that had happened since Mark was team lead, right through to the present. I even added a note. "If anything happens to me or my job, this goes to legal." Then came the final twist I didn't see coming. Julia messaged me late one night. "You might want to check the finance logs." I asked her what she meant. She sent me a screenshot from the internal budget tool. It showed Ryan had submitted an expense reimbursement 2 weeks ago, for a business lunch. Except the listed guests were fake names. One of them was Michael Bolton. Yes. The singer. He never expected anyone to check. Julia worked closely with finance and had been keeping an eye on things. It turns out this wasn't the first time. There were 4 other weird expense logs, all marked as approved. Now I had more than a workplace dispute. I had fraud. I didn't sleep the night before the all-hands meeting. I knew this was it. My final card. Everything I had, emails, witness statements, budget screenshots, the whole timeline, was printed, sorted, and sitting in a folder in my bag. I had also emailed a digital copy to myself, with a backup link sent to a private attorney friend, just in case something went sideways. The meeting was packed. Company-wide updates, quarterly numbers, team highlights. It was the usual song and dance. Sarah stood at the front, trying to keep the mood light. Then Ryan stood up for his team health and performance update. He started smiling, the fake kind, and threw out words like streamlined workflows, increased adaptability, and then some initial resistance that has thankfully settled down. I felt everyone's eyes shift for just a second. Then he said it. 1 or 2 folks had trouble adjusting, normal with change, but we've moved past that. Everyone is aligned now, which is great. My pulse spiked. That was his final jab, and I could see Julia across the room giving me a tiny nod. So I raised my hand. Sarah looked surprised. "You have something to add?" "I do," I said, standing up. "I'd like to clarify a few things that Ryan just said. And I think it's important the team hears this." Ryan blinked, trying to smile like it was nothing. Maybe we save that for a one-on-one." I cut him off. "No. This concerns everyone in this room." I walked to the front and pulled out the folder. "For the past 6 weeks, I've been accused of being resistant, of not pulling my weight, and now, apparently, I'm a roadblock. So let's look at the actual facts." I projected my timeline onto the screen. Quiet gasps went through the room. I walked everyone through emails Ryan had sent where he contradicted himself, Slack messages where he changed decisions without warning, and then I showed the expense logs. "This," I said, "is a lunch Ryan claimed to have with external consultants. Consultants like Michael Bolton. Which is impressive, since I'm pretty sure he wasn't available for project planning." People chuckled, confused at first, but then the room went dead silent as it sank in. Ryan's face turned white. He tried to step in. This is out of context." Julia stood up from the back. "It's not. I verified the logs myself." Sarah looked like she'd been punched in the gut. "Is this true, Ryan?" Ryan stammered. It was a placeholder name, the real info was coming later, but you submitted the expense," Julia said firmly. "It was approved." The room erupted. People murmured. A few turned away from Ryan completely. One guy, Tarek, muttered, "What else has he been faking?" That was the breaking point. Sarah asked everyone to step out except me, Ryan, Julia, and Natalie from HR. The second the door closed, Ryan snapped. "This is a witch hunt," he barked. "You've been undermining me since day one." "No," I said, keeping my voice low. "I gave you every chance to work together. You came after me. You lied, twisted facts, and now you're caught. Just like Mark was." Natalie was already pulling up her laptop, typing furiously. Sarah looked crushed. Ryan turned to her. You're just going to believe them? Sarah looked tired, like everything finally clicked. You said she defended Mark? That she was toxic. But you never said she was the one who took him down. Ryan stared. Wait, what? I should have known. Sarah whispered. You've been playing me the whole time. Ryan's eyes darted around like he was looking for an exit. I didn't do anything illegal, he said finally. We'll let compliance decide that, Natalie said without looking up. Ryan walked out without saying another word. That afternoon, we got a company-wide email. Ryan had resigned, effective immediately. The office was buzzing for days. People came up to me, some quiet, some supportive, some just awkward. I didn't say much. I just wanted to breathe. Julia brought me coffee the next morning and sat down beside me. You okay? She asked. I don't know, I said honestly. I'm tired. I feel like I've been fighting for months. You did the right thing. I'm not sure it matters anymore. She paused. It matters to us. Ryan didn't just try to ruin my career. He dragged people through a storm of distrust, turned coworkers against each other, and nearly made me question everything I stood for. But I'm still here. A week later, Sarah met with me privately. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. I didn't look deeper. I let him manipulate the narrative. I nodded. It's done now. She looked me in the eye. We're promoting you to senior lead. You've already been doing the job. I didn't say anything at first. It wasn't about a title. It was the fact that I was finally seen. And yet, something in me had changed. I wasn't the same person who used to stay late and clean up everyone's messes. I'd been burned too many times to pretend anymore. I took the offer. But I also took a week off. No laptop. No Slack. Just silence. I've learned a lot through all this. About power. About people. About what it means to speak up when no one else wants to. I'm not hopeful. I'm not bitter either. I'm just awake now. And I'll never be anyone's scapegoat again.